Biped is one of the cutest, most enjoyable couch co-op games we have ever played. This cute little game has you playing as two robots who have to work together to, I don't remember, you're like saving these towers or something, but you get to control each robot by moving their legs with each joystick. So the left joystick is the left leg and the right joystick is the right leg. And I remember this taking quite a bit of concentration to actually start doing, and then it just kind of became second nature as we continued to play. This adorable 3D puzzle platformer is filled with incredibly cute puzzles. There's moving platforms that will change colors as you're going along, and you'll only be able to put your foot down when it's your color. Otherwise, you're gonna trigger the thing and it'll drop, and then you'll have to start over. As you go along, there will also be some more different fun puzzles for you to do, where it's all about actually working together and what you can do for your partner so that they can accomplish the task at hand for them. This one is fantastic, one of our favorites, definitely check it out. We have played so many different couch co-op games over the years, but today we're talking about 101 of our favorite couch co-op games. Well, not necessarily our favorite, because some of them aren't our favorite, but we recognize that they're good games that you might enjoy. So let's keep going. Degrees of Separation is another interesting puzzle game. This is a 2D platformer that's filled with a bunch of different puzzles for you to accomplish together. The quirk in this game is that one of you controls a character whose element is ice, and the other controls a character whose element is fire. And the two of you can never come together. Your worlds can never collide. So you'll actually see the screen spinning and twisting as you move about each other. It's kind of like a split screen type thing where one side of the screen is always ice and one side of the screen is always fire and warm and summer. It's a beautiful dynamic, really, and it makes for some really interesting puzzles, as the ice side will have water freeze that you can walk on top of. The fire side will make some steamy jets pop up out of the ground that will be able to boost you up into the air. It makes for some really unique and interesting puzzles, and is definitely a fun game to play around with, and such an interesting, unique dynamic that they've got going on there. Manic Mechanics is in the top 3 of our favorite Overcooked-like games. This, unlike Overcooked, did not really make us angry at each other. Maybe it was just the time, maybe it was something about the game, but we really enjoy this one. And the big thing that sets it apart that we talk about every time we talk about Manic Mechanics is the controls. In Overcooked, you're just sitting there chopping the button, pressing A or whatever to chop those tomatoes. However, in Manic Mechanics, you actually have to do things that kind of correlate with the jobs you're performing. So I don't think I mentioned it, but in this game, you're going to be repairing vehicles, as you might have guessed from the title, Manic Mechanics. So you're repairing these vehicles, and maybe you're painting a door. If you're painting a door, you actually got to move the joystick from side to side like this, as it shows you on the screen, so that you can actually paint that door. Maybe you're sanding something, you gotta push it into the sanding machine with the joystick. The controls in this one, the actions that you have to do, is really fun, and just the game itself is bright, colorful, and a blast to play through. Super Crazy Rhythm Castle. This one sits on the edge of one of our favorites and not one of our favorites. Carly liked this one a lot. I was not the biggest fan because it was just too hard for me. This is a rhythm-based game that I would almost call kind of like Overcooked. It takes you through this super crazy rhythm castle where each different level is a different type of rhythm game that you've got to play. So it's kind of like you take Guitar Hero and mesh it with Overcooked. You've got these chords and you've got to press the buttons that align with them as the music plays, which the music itself is wacky and wild. So that's, just a thing on its own. But then as you're playing all of these different chords and trying to keep up with the music, you'll also have things falling from the sky that you got to clean up. I remember one level where there was these treasure chests that would drop that had like these kind of evil bat things in them that we had to scare away. We had to collect enough gems or something or other. There's just random tasks thrown in that you have to perform. And there was one where we had to like throw beans into a fire or something. There's some wild levels in here. It does not entirely make sense. It is fairly difficult for somebody who is not good at rhythm games, but Carly did enjoy it a lot as a fan of rhythm games. Pizza Possum is an interesting one. So this one has you playing as a possum, and you're eating all of the food on this island or mountain, I think it kind of is. You're basically trying to make your way to the top and eat as much food as you can on the way. You're gonna have to eat more food in order to unlock gates to progress farther up. It is a fun little challenge, and you're constantly running from, I think it might be dogs. Don't quote me on that because I don't remember. I mean, you're watching the footage right now, but I think you're running away from like dogs that are trying to catch you. But you're running away from these guys. You got to hide in bushes so that they can't catch you. And if your co-op companion gets caught, you can actually go and rescue them. It's a pretty interesting game. It has a very simple gameplay loop of just eat as much food as you can, hide away, progress up the mountain, but enjoyable nonetheless. Cassette Beasts is for my Pokemon fans out there. So this is a cooperative Pokemon game, basically, which are few and far between. I can't even think of any. Like, we played Scarlet and Violet together because we wanted to play Pokemon together, and the idea of co-op Pokemon was fantastic, and it was quite disappointing. However, Cassette Beasts is different. So this one actually, obviously it's not Pokemon. You have these beasts that you record with cassette tapes, and then you yourself can transform into them. Basically, you end up stuck on this island, you don't know where you are, and there's this big old mystery for you to solve with archangels and stuff like that. It's quite intriguing, and it's fun to learn all of the different like typings and stuff that you got going on with these new beasts that you are handling as a beast tamer or beast transformer, since you're not actually taming beasts, you're transforming into them yourself. But your companion gets to work with you and control part of your team, but they also get to wander around the world with you, which is really cool. It is kind of similar to Let's Go Eevee, but far, far better when it comes to the cooperative aspects. Chippy and Nopo is another puzzle game. I don't know if you guys know this, but we love puzzle games, and there's going to be quite a few on this list. Chippy and Nopo is basically like if you took Legos and had to assemble toys out of them to sell, and you're assembling these toys in a defunct toy factory. So basically, you are given this image on the screen, there's blocks scattered around the level, you gotta go collect the blocks, bring them together, build the toy, and put it on the platform, and then you get to progress. And as you're progressing through this game, things get a little bit more complex. Eventually, you're gonna have to use little elevators to help you get high enough to put blocks on top. You're gonna need to make sure that you're building these different toys in the right order so that you can actually get the blocks placed where they need to be. Some of these blocks you're going to need to carry together because they're so heavy. Sometimes you're going to need to cut blocks in half so that you can get the proper piece. You're going to have to paint them the proper color. It gets pretty fun and enjoyable with a lot of different puzzle elements to solve, and you're just building these cool little toys for people to sell. Yeah. Kinduo is our first very cheap game on this list. This game costs $5 on the Nintendo eShop. I think Pizza Possum is like $7, so this isn't like the first very cheap game, but it's a cheap game and you can tell from the visual style. But this is a cute little puzzle game, 2D platformer type thing. So one of you is a block that can kind of push blocks around, and the other plays as this lightning bolt with electrifying abilities. So you actually get to go ahead and electrify these different things to move elevators up and down. The other guy gets to push blocks into holes so that you can move around. And it's basically just, you need to do this, so you can do this, so you can do this, until you are able to finish the level. And you got to figure out what order to do each thing in and which character needs to get where. It is a very simplistic puzzle game, but it's fun, and it only costs $5, so definitely worth checking out for some quick little fun. Disney Illusion Island is a 2D platformer filled with Disney characters. So I believe you get to play as Goofy, Mickey, Donald, and one other character. I think it might be Daisy. Maybe you get a pick. I'm not exactly sure. You can see on screen now, I'm sure. But this is your basic 2D platformer. It's supposedly kind of made for kids, but it also can be a little challenging. There's difficulty settings to make it harder for yourself or easier for your children, and it's a fun little game to bounce around in. Honestly, we didn't get too far into it. I think more just because of time, and we bought it so that we could play it with my niece, but it is definitely a fun little challenge. It's a good game. just not one we've played a ton of. Loop Index is another one of these very cheap puzzle games. I believe it runs for $5. We bought it on sale for like $2. This game is fun. So if you ever played Pokemon, like the old school Pokemon, I don't know if they do it these days. I played a lot of the new Pokemon games, but I'm thinking like Fire Red, where you've got like these Team Rocket hideouts, right? You've got these little zippy tracks that you got to go along, and you got to make sure that you step on the right one so that you end up in the right spot. That's Loop Index. Except in Loop Index, you actually press a button, and that's going to say, I'm going to walk this direction, and then you step on the thing, and it can send you through. I don't know, it has some really fun little puzzles. You have all of the looping treadmill things, but there's also buttons you need to get on. There's things you can push onto things. There's like little frogs that you can send hopping off so that they end up stepping on a button for you. It is just a really fun little unique puzzle game that is fun to play with 2 players. We really enjoyed it. The boss fights were a little bit not great. And like the very last level, I believe it's the very last level, we still haven't beat it. We tried really, really hard on what we think is the last boss fight, and yeah, I would just give up. I would just give up. It's not worth doing that last level, but everything up till then we had a lot of fun with. Trine. So on my notes here, it literally just says Trine. It doesn't say Trine 1, Trine 2, Trine 5. So I assume that I was just kind of saying all of the Trine games. These games are fantastic. We have only played 1 and 5, and we haven't beat either of them, but I've had a ton of fun with them, and I wish Carly would play more of them with me. She's not the biggest fan of these, but I think they're absolutely fantastic. So these games, they are 1 to 3 player. You play as a knight, I think she's a thief, but she's like an archer, and a wizard, and all of you have these very different unique abilities. Now if you're playing solo, you have the opportunity to switch between all of them. If you're playing with 3 players, then you can't really switch between them, but you can choose your character and play as that character. So the wizard is able to like summon these boxes to help you with the platform. It's a 2D platformer, by the way, with a decent amount of combat as well, and a lot of puzzles to solve, and you solve the puzzles with all of the different unique abilities from your characters. So the wizard can summon these boxes for you guys to be able to use as platforms or as a weapon. The knight can use his sword to kill things. He can block projectiles with his shield. He can throw his sword into the wall and jump on it. The archer is able to shoot like grappling hook arrows and swing along. It's a lot of fun, and it's really fun trying to figure out what character you need to solve which puzzle, especially because a lot of the times you can solve them with different characters, and it's just a fun challenge to see the different ways that you could solve it. And then some of them, it's like, there's definitely a way to solve this, and I gotta figure that out. But it has a ton of fun combat, super beautiful art style in number 5. I mean, obviously the graphics in the older ones are older, but definitely check it out. Trine 1 through 5, all of them are great. Pick up whichever one you want. You don't really need to know the story from the past games in order to play the new ones. I guess my chair sunk down somehow, so I'm sorry if I was low in the earlier frames, but let's continue. Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons. We have said this on numerous occasions. One of the most memorable games we have ever played. Co-op games, that is. This is a very much story-driven game. You don't play this for the game mechanics or for the co-op. If you're playing solo, maybe you're playing for the game mechanics. If you're playing co-op, you are not playing this for the game mechanics. You are playing this for the story, for the experience. The story is about 2 brothers whose dad is sick, so they go on an adventure to try to find this like magical herb that can heal him and bring him back to life. And along the way, you're going to have a lot of interesting adventures. You're going to run into a troll. You're going to have to fight an ogre. You're going to have to be swinging across statues in an old giant castle. You're going to wander through the land of giants. It is such an adventure. It's a story to enjoy. And the reason I say you're not playing this for the game mechanics is because it's originally a solo game that was turned co-op. So in the original game, you would control both characters, one with each joystick, and I'm sure that made the game quite tricky and fun to play. However, when you split that into 2 and each person is controlling one character and only using one joystick and like one button to actually play through the entire game, the mechanics become very simple and easy to handle, but the story is still great. You can play this co-op on the Nintendo Switch with an older graphic style, or you can play the new remake that is available, I believe, on PC, Xbox, and PlayStation, and the graphics in this are fantastic, but I think that's the majority of upgrade. Death Squared, you will never guess, this is a puzzle game. Okay, so if you remember as a child, like me, I don't know if everybody played with these, but I had one as a child, and I kind of wish I had one now. I should look into ordering one. So if you remember like those little number puzzles, it's like this little square thing with the numbers like 1 through 14 or something, and you have to slide them around, try to get them in order, and there's one space missing, and you're trying to slide those around in a different order and get them set up. This is kind of like that, but in video game form and cooperative. So it supports 1 to 4 players. We've only played it with 2. I believe the 4 players is probably different levels. You have to slide around on this grid and figure out what order to go in, and you have to make sure you don't step on buttons without knowing what they do, because they're gonna blow up your partner most likely. They're gonna shoot spikes up out of the floor into your partner. So you gotta be really careful what you do. Go a little bit slow. You gotta be careful not to fall off the edge. It can get a little infuriating at times as you're trying to do this and you just keep failing, but we had a lot of fun with it. Also got pretty angry at each other when we accidentally blew each other up or fell off the edge or knocked somebody off the edge or pressed a lever that shoved somebody off the edge. So just be prepared for that. Ibanab is a game that I heard about on the Video Gamers podcast, and I had to go check it out. We included this in our video about games under $15, and it is a lot of fun. Now, we have not played through the entire thing, but it's a 2D platformer, but the unique quirk that this one has is these holes that you dive through where gravity switches. So you're going to dive through the hole, you're going to land on the other side and be walking. Now, you can only destroy enemies from one side of this, so you're going to often be relying on your co-op partner to go through and step on them and destroy them so that you can keep progressing. A lot of times you're going to end up like leaping through these holes and trying to build up some gravity momentum so that you can get a high enough jump. You might be jumping off of each other's heads. There's some different holes that only one of you can jump through depending on your color. It's just a lot of fun, such a unique mechanic, and for the bit of it that we played and enjoyed, it felt like quite a cozy game. However, what I have heard is that the game can get quite frustrating, so I guess we didn't get far enough into the game to really experience the frustrating side of it, but it's very fun, very enjoyable, and you can buy it for fairly cheap, especially if you snag it on sale. Lumberhill is another game like Overcooked. Now, this one has you playing as lumberjacks, so you've got to chop trees and turn it in, you've got to gather sheep, you're basically like this shepherd, homesteader type person, and you've got to take care of the sheep, you've got to chop wood, you've got to build bridges. It's a lot of fun, and it gets into some unique fun areas where you go back to like the time of dinosaurs, which is pretty interesting and intriguing. We haven't gotten too far into this one, but it was one that we wanted for a long time and picked up and enjoyed for a little bit, and then just eventually moved on to one of the other hundreds of co-op games that we've had to play for the channel. Portal 2 is one of the best co-op games of all time. At least so I hear. Carly got really frustrated with me playing it and wouldn't play it with anymore, but I had so much fun in the time that we played it, and I remember as a teenager actually watching people play through Portal 2 on YouTube in the co-op, and it just was so fun. It's such a mind-bending puzzle game. So this is a 3D puzzle game where you're creating these portals in the wall that you got to walk through, you got to jump through. Eventually you might end up building gravity by falling. You'll send lasers through them. You'll carry companion cubes through them. It is a ton of fun. It is mind-bending and just an absolutely fantastic, perfect piece of work that I'm hoping I will eventually be able to convince Carly to play with me again, because I need to. You can accidentally smash each other's robots into pieces in this, or smash them on purpose. If you want something that really twists your brain and is enjoyable and so fun to solve puzzles in, pick this one up. You can pick up the Portal Companion Collection on Switch, or you can pick it up on Steam, but I think those are your only options other than like some older consoles. TMNT Shredder's Revenge is a classic retro beat 'em up made into the modern era. So this is obviously Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It is super fun. Each of the characters have their own unique fighting styles. There's also, you get to help like revive one another. You get to eat pizza to heal yourself and just fight a horde of bad guys. So this was actually one of the first beat 'em ups that we've played. One of the only beat 'em ups we've played, now that I think about it, other than like Castle Crashers. I can't think of other beat 'em ups we've played, which is odd because they are such a common game in the co-op genre. But it's super fun. It's got a pretty decent story. It's much more aimed towards hitting that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles nostalgia, which neither Carly or I have. So if you have that nostalgia for TMNT, if you love it, then definitely pick this one up. If you're just looking for a fun beat 'em up, this one's good. There's a couple others out there. Tied Together is probably the most hilarious game on this list. I don't know if there's a game that we have ever played that has made us laugh as much as Tied Together has. In this game, you play as a bunch of different monsters that are tied together. There's some levels for 2 players, and then there's some levels for 3 to 4 players, and it is so much fun. It is incredibly hilarious, and 100% you have to pick this game up. I think we bought it for like $2 on sale, but normally I think it's like 15. This game is so worth it. So you're tied together, which is the entire crux of the game. It makes it so much more enjoyable. You have to make it through these 2D platforming levels that are filled with spikes and all sorts of different hazards. You have to really learn to time your jumps together so that you can make it across. Otherwise, you're going to end up dragging each other down. You're going to end up with one of you dying, and then their dead body is just kind of dangling there and dragging the rest of the crew down. It is a wild adventure. I just have to say, pick it up. I think I'm taking a little too long on some of these games, so I'm going to speed it up. Shakes on a Plane is an Overcooked-like game, but it's on a plane. You've got to play as like airplane waitresses. I forget what they're called. Air hostesses? I don't know. Anyway, you're playing as them. You're making burgers and fries and milkshakes and stuff and bringing them to the customers. It is a ton of fun, and there's some quacky levels because it's on a plane. Shift Happens is a fantastic, enjoyable 2D platformer. So in this one, you're going to play as 2 blobby characters that basically shift their mass from one to the other in order to solve the puzzles that they're facing. So sometimes you're going to need to be small in order to sneak through a level. So one of you sneaks through the level and then switches mass so that the other person can come through. There's going to be like pressure plates that you hop on, so one of you hops on it as the heavy person sends the small guy flying, and then the small guy has to transform into the big guy on the way down so that he can launch the other guy even higher, and you got to build up momentum like that. There's blocks that you have to push around. You have to be able to throw each other. This is a ton of fun, a very unique 2D platformer. Just maybe don't try to get 3 stars because that ended up frustrating us sometimes, but otherwise incredibly fun. If you've made it this far, congratulations. That is 20 games under our belt already. And at this point, I want to draw you to the sponsor of this video, which is my shirt. This shirt was designed specifically for this video. As you can see, it says co-op, but you might not be able to see that up closer. It has the names of all 101 of the games that we're talking about in this video on it. So you won't have to actually come back and refer to this video in the future if you can go ahead and buy the shirt. You'll be able to just look at it and pick out a co-op game. You'll be like, hey, honey, what game do you want to play today? And you can be like, oh, well, I don't know, let me look. I would like to play Trine, or I would like to play Cat Quest 2, which we'll talk about later. You can pick up the shirt with the top link in the description or at thecoopstop.com. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Now, let's move on to game number 21. Tools Up is another Overcooked-like game, except this one, like Manic Mechanics, did not make us angry, which is such a miracle with games like this, because they can be so frustrating, but Tools Up just had something about it that we really enjoyed. It was a little bit more cozy, the levels were a little bit easier, and that's what really sets it apart from Overcooked. We highly recommend it. If you've tried Overcooked but got too frustrated with it, check this one out. This one is all about home remodels. Instead of chopping onions and tomatoes, you're going to be working on repainting walls, ripping up carpets, laying new carpets, laying tiles, putting on wallpaper, cleaning out furniture. This is a fun little unique quirky game that is just enjoyable to play. Struggling is perhaps the wackiest game that we have ever played. This is so odd. You play as this weird blob with 2 arms, and that's what you control. Each of you controls 1 arm of this character, and you have to like grab onto things and move around. It's a 2D platformer type game, but you're using the arms to move around. Each of you is controlling 1 arm, but you're controlling the same character, which is wild, and you're moving through these very gross, fleshy areas. It's wild, and you've got to swing, and there's like weird monsters that'll eat you. There's puddles of acid you can fall in. This game is insane. It's fleshy, it's weird, it's gross, but it's fun. But it's fun, it's laughable, and you need to try it. Box Boy and Box Girl is one of the first games we picked up. Now this has an incredibly simple art style, as you can see, boxes, and you play as Box Boy and Box Girl, who are able to eject a certain number of boxes to create platforms for them to use to make it through this 2D puzzle platformer. It's pretty fun, it's unique, it's published, I believe, by Nintendo, and maybe developed by Nintendo, I'm not sure, but it's a fun puzzle platformer that is fairly cheap, so go ahead and check it out. Unravel 2 is one of the co-op games that really got us into couch co-op gaming. There are a few, but this is definitely one of them. So this one you play as these little yarn characters trying to traverse through this 2D platformer. To this day, I can't tell you what the story of this game is. I have no clue. It's rather odd and eerie, has some shadows in the background, has some crazy things going on in the background of the game, but that doesn't really matter because what you're playing for is the game mechanics. You are swinging, so you can actually throw your yarn up to like hook onto things, and you swing across it kind of like Spider-Man. Other than like the actual Spider-Man game, this is the game that has given me the most feeling of being Spider-Man. It's so fun to be able to swing across things. You got to jump on ledges, you got to pull each other up by the yarn. It is such a unique puzzle platformer with a lot of different things for you to do to cooperate and move through the levels. It's so fun. How to Escape. This is not necessarily a couch co-op game, but it is a co-op game that you can play together basically on the couch. So one of you actually has to play on your phone. So you download the app for it, and then you are able to give instructions to your other person. This is an escape room. The person playing on the console or the PC or whatever is trapped on a train, and the other person is on the phone with them or something like that, and trying to give them directions to solve all the puzzles to make it through the different levels of the escape room on the train. It's got an interesting story where you've been kidnapped. Your train is like, I think it's like headed to crash or something, and you're trying to stop it, but it's got some fun puzzles. They were not the best. Some of them made us pretty frustrated, so definitely take advantage of using the hints in it if you need, and maybe even Google things if you're having a lot of trouble. But it is a fun little puzzle game, and we love these type of escape room games. Trinity Trigger is a JRPG, which is a genre that neither of us are very familiar with, but I had a lot of fun with this one. We haven't beat it. We haven't even got too far into it, but it is really interesting, and it's a great co-op JRPG that you can play and try together. So you have these triggers, which are like animals that can transform into a bunch of different weapons for you to use, and you play as a trio of 3 characters. So whether you're playing solo or co-op, you're gonna have all 3 of these characters, and you're gonna move through the world and be able to swap between them to accomplish different goals. So each of them will have a little bit of some different abilities to be able to smash rocks or do this or do that, and you get to go through dungeons, and it just reminded me a lot of like the classic type of RPGs, and it's a really fun one to try out. Water break. It'd be really cool if this was one of our mugs. I wish I had one of our mugs, and I could be like, you can get this just like this shirt at thecoopstop.com. But I don't have any mugs, so if you see that in the future, this is where that idea originated. Fueled Up is yet another Overcooked-like game, but the difference here, there's not a lot of difference. We got really angry in this one. So the difference is that you're on a spaceship and you're doing all sorts of different things on the spaceship. You got to make sure that the airlock is closed. You got to make sure that you are keeping power in the batteries and all sorts of different stuff. It's super fun. There's a lot of different things to do in it. It's basically just a reskinned Overcooked based in a spaceship. So if you like that type of game, this one's for you. Just know it made us angry, and it was fairly difficult, just like Overcooked is. Okay, I just realized maybe some of you don't know what Overcooked is, so I actually am moving it forward in the list. I don't know what number it is on this list. It's like 70 or something. So we're moving it forward and we're gonna talk about it right now. Overcooked is a game that we refer to a lot here. It is the first one that we ever played, and I believe like the first kind of its kind. So in this game, you are cooking dishes and serving them as fast as you can. It is a hectic cooperative game where you are running around the kitchen, you're grabbing vegetables, you're chopping them, you're throwing them in the pan or the pot, you're taking dirty dishes and washing them, you're cooking up all these dishes and sending them out to the customers. You also are dealing with a bunch of different hazards in each of these levels. Sometimes the earth will shake and they'll separate. Sometimes you're playing on different like icy levels. There's all sorts of different environmental hazards that they introduce, fires that you got to take care of, different moving bits and pieces. Sometimes you're in cars and you got to throw stuff back and forth to each other. It is a hectic game. It is a lot of fun, but it can get very difficult in the later levels and it can ruin relationships. So be careful with it. But we will call that Overcooked 1 and Overcooked 2 as two separate games, but they are the same game, just new levels and like updated graphics and stuff. Bravery and Greed. This is a 2D game with a lot of fighting, and I remember like one of the things that was interesting about it, and we did like a weird little skit when we did our review of this game, where I died and Carly came and stole all my coins. So there's like a little bit of competitiveness or thievery going on mixed in with the co-op, so you could actually like steal stuff from one another as you're going along. But it is a fun little game where you get to do a lot of fighting. There's some upgrades to do along the way, some fun little like pieces of gear and stuff that you can get that give you different abilities, and you can see on screen what the game looks like and take it basically for what it looks like. That's what it is. Escape Academy. I had this one game after How to Escape and had to move it forward just to create a little bit of separation here. So this is another escape room game, and this one is actually the first one well, I guess it's not the first one we played, but it's the first couch co-op one that we played, and we like it a lot more than How to Escape. This is a really enjoyable game where you are basically in this place called the Escape Academy. You are learning how to escape all of these different rooms, and they are all simulated until they're not, as you'll learn in the story. So it's a lot of fun. You get to like look at this and that and this and that. And what sets it apart from like a normal escape room is sometimes those escape rooms will have a lot of stuff you can interact with and see that's not really important. However, in this, the majority of stuff that is important to you will actually let you examine it and look at it, which makes it a little easier to make it through some of these puzzles, but it's still quite intriguing and brain strengthening to play through this game. Picture this as a mug with some cool controllers on it that are holding hands. Ship of Fools is a roguelike game. I think this one's a roguelite game. Sometimes I still struggle to know the difference, but I believe a roguelite actually lets you upgrade things permanently through the game, which a roguelike will not. So that's my definition. If you could tell me what the actual difference between a roguelike and a roguelite is, let me know in the comments. But this is, in my opinion, a roguelite game, and I think that's what it says on the website. You play as these funky little characters on a ship trying to brave the aqua apocalypse. So the way that combat works in this one is that you actually will man cannons on the deck and be able to shoot all of these monsters as you sail through the sea. It's really fun because you get to load all sorts of different random ammos into your cannons. You get to upgrade to different cannons. At some points you'll be shooting like saw blades or cans of beans or all sorts of different random amusing ammo sources. You could even put like pieces of wood in there. That I don't recommend that, because the pieces of wood can actually be used to repair your ship and help you continue going through the levels. There's also a bit of combat that takes place on the ship itself, where you take like your oar and you're whacking away all of the enemies that board the ship or get too close. However, you can also whack each other, which could be frustrating and also hilarious at the same time. This is perhaps the most cooperative roguelite that we have played. It's a ton of fun, and it plays similar to an Overcooked-like game, but as a roguelite. Super Cane Magic Zero is another wild and wacky game. This one we picked up simply because of how odd and funky it looks. So I believe it's kind of like an action RPG. There are different classes that you get to choose from to play as, and a bunch of different like weird and wacky weapons and pieces of gear and loot that you get to pick up and play with. The story in this one is weird. The puzzles in this one have no explanation. It's an interesting game to pick up. We never made it too far into it, but I wish we had played more than we did. Nobody Saves the World. Speaking of action RPGs, this is one of our top couch co-op games. Nobody Saves the World is absolutely fantastic. In this one, you play as a character called Nobody, who gets a magic wand and is able to use it to transform into various different creatures. You start out, I believe, with a mouse, and each of these creatures have their own different fighting styles and unique abilities and things that they can do. And as you progress through the game, you'll be able to unlock more transformations. You'll be able to level up each of these different transformations by completing quests for them. And it's just so fun to unlock new transformations, and eventually you'll be able to like take bits and pieces of each transformation. You'll be able to take bits and pieces of each transformation and mesh them together to create your perfect character that you could fight through the game with. The story in this one is great. The map that you get to explore is really fun, and especially as you're trying to figure out how you can use each unique character ability to move through the game. Like, some of them can swim, some of them are really small and can make it through small areas. Combat gets really wild. The dungeons are fantastic, especially as you get to the harder dungeons that start introducing different modifiers. Like, there's one where every creature just deals like infinite damage, so it's basically like one hit. It's a fantastic action RPG to play through. Definitely recommend it. Water break. I don't know how long the video is at this point, but I've been sitting here for 52 minutes and 30 seconds recording. So let's keep going. Conan Chop Chop is another roguelite game. In this one, you play as Conan characters. So you can play as Conan. There's a couple other characters, each with their own fighting styles and stuff, and different skills that you get to upgrade if you play as them. We didn't get too far into this one because it was just a little too difficult for Carly, and she got really frustrated as we kept dying on like the very first boss. So yeah, but it was a lot of fun. I think it's enjoyable to play through. You get to play as like an archer, you get to play as a sword person. There's different things to upgrade from your stats, like from your character skills to buying new weapons for each run. It's a lot of fun. It has an interesting art style that I absolutely love. Merrick's Market is the first game we played that we said is better than Overcooked. Now, I think in this one, we didn't get super mad at each other either. We probably got a little mad here and there, but not as mad as like with an Overcooked game. In this one, you play as a medieval tavern owner, and you're making all sorts of different things to sell to your customers. You've got to make swords and lights and gloves and all sorts of different things. And there's also like some interesting boss levels that are really fun to participate in. You start brewing potions. We literally titled this one, "This Game is Better Than Overcooked," when we released our review. So check this one out. Hetaria Fables is an action RPG farming simulator, weird mix of genres that don't entirely blend well together, but it's fun to pick up and enjoy. So you play this one mostly like for the atmosphere, because neither of the farming or the action RPG genres are quite fantastic here, but it's an interesting mesh of things. Now, the biggest problem I had with this is that the areas in the game were so small that I got really sick of playing it and just stopped because I didn't want to continue loading new areas. However, it is an interesting concept. You play as this cat, you have this farming area that you get to go farm in, and you're mostly farming just to be able to make like healing items for yourself, and then you get to go do your general action RPG stuff, but you don't level up at all as you're going along. You just upgrade your weapons and stuff. Water break. My throat is getting more and more sore as we're moving through this video. Code is an interesting one because it plays as a cozy game, but at points it's not entirely cozy. So yes, you play this one for the atmosphere. It is a 3D puzzler, and you move your way through these worlds. Each of your different characters has their own unique abilities. So you play as a star and a rock, and the rock is able to make like rock growths grow, and the star is able to make plants and stuff grow. It's a very interesting concept, and each level you move through, you really start working on beautifying it, and that also helps reveal like clues and stuff for how to solve the puzzles and make it through the level. You get to make plants grow that you can hop on. You get to make like rock elevators work. You get to move around little blocks and put them in slots and place them on buttons and all sorts of different things. It is a puzzle game, and it has that very calming, peaceful atmosphere. However, some of the puzzles in it were quite frustrating to us. So if you're going to play this one, be willing to Google solutions if you need to. But otherwise enjoy, because it is quite cozy for most of it. I remember 39 Days to Mars quite clearly. This was one of the first games that we ever received a game code for, which was awesome. And it is such an interesting, quirky game to play through. So you play through this game. It's got such an interesting art style. It's like hand-drawn on like parchment paper, and you play as these little British characters that are constantly saying, "Oh, I need to stop for a cup of tea" or something. That was not supposed to be a British accent. That was just me talking. But they're always wanting to stop for like a cup of tea and biscuits and stuff. And you're basically trying to make it to Mars in this spaceship. So you go through these 39 days to Mars. You have to solve all sorts of different puzzles along the way. Some of them are really fun and engaging, and some of them made us incredibly angry. But for the most part, this is a very enjoyable game. It like can be beaten in like 40 minutes, but I think it took us several hours. I can't really remember exactly. It's so fun to make it through these days and solve the puzzles. You got to memorize different things. You got to like do like literal puzzles where you're trying to put things back together. And the whole time you're playing as these British characters that eventually sometimes you're just going to go and make a cup of tea or make some biscuits and figure out what jams to spread on them and stuff. It is a game that is fun, but can be infuriating with some of the puzzles. It Takes Two needs very little description. This is the best couch co-op game that you can play. Go ahead and pick it up. It's about a couple on the verge of divorce. It is a 3D platformer that introduces a bunch of different types of game genres along the way. The story is great, other than a little bit too much of Dr. Hakim throughout the game. But the way that you work together in this one, and the fact that it is literally impossible to play solo, makes it so good. It is the game I recommend to everyone. And if you don't like it, that's fine, but the majority of people are going to love it. I might be saying water break too often now. Like, at what point does this bit get old? Enter the Gungeon is a roguelike. Not a roguelite, a roguelike. There is nothing to upgrade throughout the game to make this one easier. It is all completely reliant on your muscle memory and your skill as you go through the game. It is a bullet hell where you continue to dive deeper, and as with roguelites and roguelikes, there's permadeath, which I don't think I explained earlier, so if you didn't know what that genre was, I apologize. There's permadeath, and you just have to continue trying to work your way through the level until you eventually beat the game. Now, we personally have never made it past level 2 in Enter the Gungeon, but we have had a lot of fun with it, and my brother-in-law has like over 450 hours. He absolutely loves this game, and we have a lot of fun playing it, but we're just not very good, and definitely not good enough to beat the game. I don't know if you've noticed, but this video is entirely unscripted. I've just got the list of games in front of me, and I'm talking about them from memory, from my head, so I hope you enjoy this little bit of a different style of video. Bati Byteland Overclocked is a 3D platformer that reminded me a lot of Astro's Playroom, although it did not hit as hard, unfortunately. Now, in this game, you play as this little robot, Bati, who is making his way through the computer system to look for viruses and stop them, and It has a very fantastic theme. The levels are gorgeous. You get to like hop on top of all these different discs and explore the computer system. There's a lot of different fun things here. It just didn't hit perfectly for us as a co-op game or really as a fantastic 3D platformer. It's a meh game for us personally, but what really hits about it is the theming and everything. It is a joy to play through the computer and see all of the different things and all of the art, and there are some fun parts as well, like the little boat races and stuff. We did enjoy those. D-Corp is if you took a tower defense game and meshed it with Overcooked. You are basically setting up like a tower defense thing because there's these aliens that are going to come through and try to jump into your grinder, and you don't want them to make it there. So you're setting up all of these turrets, and you're trying to keep the turrets loaded so that they can keep shooting these bugs that are trying to get through. And you're also trying to collect this material and throw it into your grinder. And it is fun, but very difficult to not play in like 4-player co-op. Well, I guess we've never played it in 4-player co-op, but if it's not easier in 4-player co-op, this game is hard. I don't know what else to say, but we have really enjoyed it. I think it's great. I wish we could play more because I love tower defense games. Carly just does not like games that are overly difficult for her. Neither do I really, but I make some exceptions. For example, Ember Knights. I guess not overly difficult, but we love Ember Knights. This is a roguelite game, and it is our favorite roguelite, the game that we have played. The rest, they're kind of like meh. We never have beat them. Come to think of it, we've never beat Ember Knights either, but we have been so very close to beating Ember Knights. In this game, you play as these very cute little Ember Knights. You start off with a sword, but you can unlock a bunch of different weapons. You get to unlock these cool different skills and passive abilities as you go along, and as you continue to play through the game, you're going to unlock more and more of them so that every time you get to select some, you have a bigger variety, and eventually you'll have enough that you can be able to like go down a lane. Like you can be like, I'm gonna be the fire guy and get all of the different fire things that will let you do so much fire damage. Or you can be like, I'm gonna get the fire one, and then I'm gonna get the ice one that says every time I burn somebody, it's also going to freeze them. And then I'm gonna get a different ice one that says every time I attack a frozen person, I'm gonna heal, or stuff like that. It is so fun. It is such a good game. We have been so close to beating it, but haven't quite beat it yet because it can be pretty tough, and we've unlocked literally everything in the game and still have not quite managed to beat it, but we've got over 20 hours in it, and I highly recommend. Patch Quest is another roguelite game. I believe this one is. We haven't played a whole bunch of this one, but it's basically if you took Pokemon and combined it with a roguelite game. So you're basically fighting against all of these different monsters, but you can also wrangle them and ride them and use the different abilities that they have. It is a very intriguing game with a lot of bullet hell going on, where you're trying to dodge all the bullets and you're shooting out berries, and you can combine different berries to make different types of ammos that will do more damage and stuff. I am currently 108 minutes in, and we just talked about our 45th game. I believe the number's up there, so tell me if I'm wrong, but I hope I deserve another pitch to you guys. Please go ahead and join our Discord. You can find the link in the description down below. We are there to talk to you guys about co-op games, share our favorite games, tell you when games are on sale. It is a fantastic community that we're trying to build up of fellow gamers who love couch co-op gaming, so please join it. Let's move on to game number 46. River Tales Stronger Together. So this is a very interesting 3D platformer. You play as Finn the fish and Furple the cat, and it is so incredibly cute. I mean, just look at this art style. I absolutely love it. There is also a ton of very intriguing puzzle mechanics, and we are just kind of waiting for it to come to actual consoles before we finish the game, unfortunately. You play through all sorts of different areas, and basically the whole game is taking you through a water path that also has a land path, because obviously the fish needs to stay in the water and the cat needs to stay on the land, and you have to work together to solve different puzzles regarding that and help each other across the path to make it to the end of the level. Bread and Fred is one of those games that is on the list, not because it's our favorite, but because we recognize that it's a pretty good game that people liked. Now this one, we do not recommend playing as a couple because it might make you even more angry than Overcooked. We got very angry at each other and did not get very far into this one. I don't even think we bought the game. We were trying to play the demo and got so frustrated, but it can be great. And if you are up for some frustration, definitely check this one out. So it is a game where you're trying to climb to the top of a mountain, I believe. You are tied together as two cute little penguins who use their rope to swing each other to different ledges, but some of the ledges are covered in ice. You'll go slipping off. You'll fall back to the beginning and get so frustrated that you have to keep going up again. And yeah, it is not entirely fun for people who don't want to be frustrated. But if you're fine being frustrated and you have the motivation to keep working on it, then definitely check out Bread and Fred. Curse of the Sea Rats. I don't know why I said it like that. That's how we always say it. My wife and I, we always say it to each other like that. If one of us says Curse of the Sea Rats, the other will go Curse of the Sea Rats. I don't know. Anyway, this is a Metroidvania game that was a ton of fun. I definitely recommend checking this one out. So you play as these rats who are not rats. They're humans who were transformed into rats by this evil witch. And then you get tasked by, you're also criminals. You were locked in a boat. And so you get tasked by the guy that had the boat, whose son was now kidnapped, to go rescue his son in exchange for freedom, I think. So yeah, you play through all of these different levels. There's so much of this map to explore. There's fun new abilities to unlock, fantastic boss fights. We had a ton of fun with this one. Now, unfortunately, we did play it as an early access thing, so we had a lot of bugs that we played that I'm not sure if they've patched. I hope they have. We weren't even actually able to beat the game because we got soft locked. But other than the bugs, this was a fantastic experience. And I'm guessing by now they've fixed the bugs. Each character has their own fighting style and their own skill tree that you get to level up and enjoy all of the various different skills that has to offer. Not to mention that the art style is charming and reminds me of a lot of like classic Disney movies. Water break. Don't Starve Together. We have made it to our first survival game, which is interesting because I love survival games. Don't Starve Together is a survival game where you get to play together. So you're plopped out into the middle of nowhere, no clue what you're doing there, no clue what anything is, and you just start collecting grass and poop and branches and making axes and pickaxes and collecting stone and then making different machines to help you craft more things. This is such a fun game that requires some Googling in order to figure out how to play because it is not entirely self-explanatory. We also personally use some of the modifiers on it to make our gameplay a little bit easier. But it's a lot of fun. You got to make sure that you have a fire when the dark comes or you're just going to go ahead and die in the dark. You get to build up your camp and fight all sorts of different monsters. Now, I will mention we do have some trouble fighting the monsters on consoles. I haven't actually played on PC, but I imagine it's not as hard on PC to actually fight the monsters with a keyboard and a mouse as it is on consoles. But regardless, this is a ton of fun. The bosses are fantastic. We die to them the majority of the times, unfortunately, because fighting, again, like I said, it's really hard to do the kiting stuff. But as you're going along, you get to do all of the collecting. You get to like start farming. You can do fishing. You can, I believe, go sail on the ocean. We haven't made it that far. There's caves to go down and explore. There's different biomes to find, and it's fun to go through the upgrade path of everything. There's just something about survival games that are really close to my heart, and this is one of my favorites, especially when I get to play it with Carly. Stardew Valley is one of our favorite games. It is, I think, the game we have the most hours in together, and it's just a super fun game to play. So this is a farming simulator. If you're not interested in farming simulators, I apologize. You can go ahead and skip on to the next one. You play as this character whose grandpa died and you inherited their farm, so you get to come to the farm. You start clearing the land, you start planting crops, you sell stuff so you can get a backpack and build buildings and then put animals into them. There's all sorts of different things to do. You can go explore the caves, you can go fishing, you can complete the community center by gathering all of the different things that it needs. Stardew Valley is very peaceful. It is a game that moves slowly but still keeps you enthralled and makes you want to keep playing and growing your crops and seeing where you can make it. So if you want something a little bit more peaceful that is easy to play together, this is the one. Bake and Switch is another Overcooked-like game. So this one has you playing with these little dough creatures that you pick up and gather together and smush together into a big glob, and then you throw them in the oven, and that's your score. And you also have to avoid like these moldy dough creatures that are trying to infect your creatures. And it's an Overcooked-like game where you go about gathering dough creatures and cooking them in the oven. Blanc, I believe is how it's said, is an interesting game. This, like Brothers: A Tale of Two Sons, is a game you play for the story, not necessarily for the gameplay. It's a 3D puzzle game with a lot of story-driven stuff. So you play as this little, I believe it's a little fox and a little fawn, and you're both trying to make your way back to your family. And though these two animals generally wouldn't get along, you actually have to work together in order to make it back to your families. And as you have seen on the screen already, the entire game is in black and white. It is hand-drawn black and white, which we found it a little difficult sometimes to really make out what things were, but for the most part, it worked fairly well. The puzzles are very simplistic and easy to make your way through. Again, you play this one for the story and for the cozy atmosphere as you go along, and it plays for about 3 hours. It is an enjoyable game to pick up if you enjoy this kind of story-based game with not a whole lot of gameplay mechanics that are gonna blow your mind. Doom and Destiny Worlds is like if you took Dungeons and Dragons and mixed it with Stardew Valley. There is so much to do in this game. You play as these 4 nerds who are playing Dungeons and Dragons and ended up getting teleported through a portal and landed on this island. You have been called here by some magic to actually go ahead and save the world, but you're just these Dungeons and Dragons playing nerds. And yeah, there's turn-based combat, there is farming, there is caves to go in, you can sail across the waters and find new islands. We played this one for quite a few hours, and I don't even think we made a dent in the game. Are you imagining this as a mug with cute Joy-Con-like controllers holding hands with a heart in between them? Because you should be. Heave-Ho is a very interesting 2D platformer, I guess you would call it. This one is kind of like struggling in the fact that you play as a character that has 2 arms and you're controlling the arms, but you each have your own character. So you get to control both arms, and then you just have this little body in the middle of those arms. And you're grabbing onto things and swinging about and just basically trying to traverse by grabbing onto things and moving your way across the level like that. And occasionally you'll have to like grab onto each other and swing each other across, throw each other across onto different platforms. This is a wild party game. It is so fun to play. There is so many different laughs that you'll have, and the levels are short enough that it's easy to pick up and play for just a little stint and not have to feel like you're sucked in. But a fantastic party game, almost on par with Tied Together. Good Job is a little game that's published by Nintendo, and in this game you start at the bottom of a company and work your way up through various different jobs. You have to complete a bunch of different tasks, like taking a projector from one room to another. It's very interesting because you can do this very simply and easily, or you can wreak as much havoc. You can wreak as much havoc, wreck as much. I don't know which one it is. You can cause as much havoc as you want along the way, and every time you break something, a little number like will pop up that says just how much it costs to break that thing. And at the end of the level, you are rated by how fast you did it, I think, and how much monetary damage you caused. This one's wild and wacky, and you get to like launch things across with little electrical cords that you make into slingshots. It's fun, and it's just wonky and fun. Game Builder Garage is an interesting one because this one isn't necessarily a co-op game. However, it can be. This is a game on Nintendo Switch that lets you learn how to design games and then make your own. So it's solo until you make your own co-op game or multiplayer game. So, you know, go at this as a single player person and design something for the 2 of you to play together, or the 3 of you to play together, or the 4 of you to play together, and just have fun and be creative. I really enjoyed going through their little lessons of how to make the games. Kirby and the Forgotten Land is again one of these games that's on here not because it's one of our favorites, but because we know that there are people out there, maybe like you, who are going to like it. This is a fantastic game, don't get us wrong. It just is not incredibly a fantastic couch co-op game. So it's a Kirby game. You have all of these different abilities that you get to use. You get to swallow a car and become a car. The problem here is that player 2 doesn't get to do any of those cool things that Kirby does, and a lot of the little side levels in the game are single player and don't even let player 2 play. However, it is a really fun game to play with somebody who just wants to assist and not really be totally involved. So I know that my brother-in-law played this with his daughter and they had a blast playing it together. For me and Carly, we were always wanting to be Kirby, so we had to make sure to swap off so that we both got the time to play as Kirby and really enjoy the game for what it is. So just be aware of that. Player 2 is going to miss out on some of the things that make this a fantastic game. Lego Harry Potter. The Lego games are great. They are almost always on sale, and the majority of them support couch co-op. So definitely go ahead and check out a Lego game of your chosen genre. This one you play as, you know, characters from the Harry Potter universe. You play through the game, you get to cast spells, you get to do little magics, you get to break things and assemble Lego things, and it's just a ton of fun. It's a Lego game. If you don't know what they are, look into them. They're really fun. They're very simple, but you can get them in most genres, like our next game, which is Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, which is just covering all of the Star Wars movies. And again, it's Lego and Star Wars. You get to break things, you get to slice things, you get to slice characters with your lightsaber, you get to do all sorts of different random fun things, jump off buildings and see your character fall apart, collect studs, find secrets. It's a Lego game in the Star Wars universe. Just don't get this one on Switch because it does not look good. Buy it on some other hardware. Luigi's Mansion 3. Now this one we actually don't even own. We borrowed it from my brother-in-law, and it is a ton of fun to play together. It is a ton of fun to play solo. I think we borrowed it specifically to do a Halloween stream one year and had some fun with it. It was a little tricky, like jumping into the middle and not really knowing how the co-op all works. Also, the co-op is not unlocked from the beginning. I believe you have to play for like 2 hours or something to unlock co-op. So just keep that in mind. But you are just going around busting ghosts, exploring this mansion. One of you plays as Luigi and the other plays as Gooigi, which is a goo form of Luigi that has some different abilities and things that he can do that Luigi can't, and Luigi has things that he can do that Gooigi can't. Moving Out is another Overcooked-like game, and this one actually comes from the same publisher as Overcooked does. So instead of chopping onions and tomatoes and cooking and doing all of this stuff that you do in Overcooked, in Moving Out, you are moving out. You are grabbing furniture. You could throw it through the windows. You can take it down the stairs. You got to figure out how to maneuver it through tight corridors in order to get it out to the moving truck as fast as you can. You've got to get all of this stuff out there, figure out a way, whether it's, you know, like I said, throwing it through the window or taking it down the stairs. There's a way to do it and you can figure it out. And some of these things are too heavy, so you're gonna have to carry them together, and some of them you can just chuck as far as you like can chuck them. I don't know where I was going with that. This is not really our favorite one, not necessarily because it made us angry, because I don't think it did. It just never really has captured my attention. It gets a little stale for us, but I know there are some really wild and wacky different places that you get to go and move things out from. I think it was just a little bit too monotonous for us personally, but we're going to count Moving Out and Moving Out 2 as 2 games. Mario Bros. U Deluxe. Now, I absolutely loved the new Super Mario Bros. Wii game, and this is New Super Mario Bros. U game, but on the Switch, and it's a 2D platformer that you get to play as the Mario characters and work your way through these different levels, and it's super fun. Carly's better at 2D platformers than me, so she always is leaving me behind, but at least this one she's never played and doesn't have the levels memorized. So I at least stand a little bit of a chance. It's a 2D Mario platformer. I don't really know what to say. It's really fun. It's really colorful. You get to get all of the different power-ups. You get to do the very simple boss fights. Out of Space is another Overcooked-like game. Man, there's a lot of those on here. But I don't want that to turn you off of them, because while these games are all in a very similar genre, they each are unique in their own way. For example, Out of Space has you working on a spaceship and is probably one of the least like Overcooked games, because it has you moving through these different rooms and trying to clean them up in this spaceship so that you can, I believe, rent it out to people. I can't remember the story, but there's these little alien buggers that have come through and slimed it all up, and you're fighting against them and putting them into the grinder, and you need to make sure to take a shower if you get all gooey. You need to make sure to take a nap or go to sleep so that you have energy. It is a very interesting, fun little game where you get to work your way through these different rooms and set up these different machines that do different things. Much as I just said, there's so many Overcooked-like games. Potion Party is another one. Now, this is a very simple pixelated game that is very interesting and very fun. You are brewing all of these different potions. You've got to avoid different mobs that are coming in and trying to attack you as you're doing this. And you also get to like grow the things that you are mixing into the potions yourself. Other than that, it has a very similar gameplay. Rayman Legends is a fantastic 2D platformer, but this is the one where I was talking about. Carly has it memorized, and so she just left me behind really fast, and I got frustrated and didn't play very much of it. But it has some fantastic boss fights. It has some fantastic music levels. It is a super fun 2D platformer that people love and is so incredibly highly rated. It supports 1 to 4 players, so if you're looking for one of these, I think a lot of people like this a little bit more than like the Mario Bros. U Deluxe, and it's available everywhere. Speed Crew is an Overcooked-like game where you work as a pit crew repairing cars as they come off of the racetrack. You have to pump up tires, you have to replace different pieces of the vehicle. It has a story that is some sort of kind of like spin-off-ish thing of the Fast and Furious characters. It wasn't particularly our style because we just don't really care for like race cars and stuff, but if that's you, then maybe try this Overcooked-like game. Snipperclips is an adorably cute puzzle game where you play as 2 characters who have the ability to like snip little pieces and parts off of each other with their own shape of their own body. So you gotta like rotate yourself and snip each other into the shapes that are required to solve the puzzles. Like one of you may need to make yourself into a little bowl that can hold a ball so that you can move the ball across the level and put it into a hoop. And that's just one example. Sometimes you might need to be like really skinny so you can stick a piece of your body in to press a button or something like that. It is a very intriguing little puzzle game that is simple, easy to play, and it can bring some funny laughs as you accidentally chop each other to pieces or make weird shapes. Mario 3D World is a 3D platformer that is Mario. You play as the Mario characters. This one is really fun. There's a little bit of like competitive action as you try to figure out as you try to do better than the other players so that you can have the crown and be like, oh, I'm better than you. But it's just a really fun cooperative 3D platformer that you get to play through. It's not our favorite 3D platformer, but it is a good one. Mario Bros. Wonder is perhaps my favorite 2D platformer that I have played. We had an absolute blast with this one. The Wonder Flowers are wonky and beautiful. They make some really weird things happen in the world and just make some of the most intriguing gameplay in this. But I also just love that classic Mario 2D platformer. Now I have nostalgia to this, Carly has nostalgia to this, but I do think that it is just a fantastic family-friendly fun 2D platformer that you just get to run along and collect the Wonder Flowers and explore these wonderful worlds and go through the different castles and fight the bosses, and what you see on screen is what you get, plus a bunch of wonky stuff from the Wonder Flowers, where you can play as Goombas, you can play as this slime that sticks to the wall, you can run on top of rhinos. 2D and Top D is a very intriguing puzzler. So this game swaps between top-down and 2D perspectives. One character is 2D and one character is Top D or top-down, and that's the whole gimmick of this game. Is one of you is trying to solve the puzzle, and you got to swap between your different perspectives in order to move different things around or cause different things to happen so that you can make it to the end of the level. Very Very Valet is another Overcooked-like game, but this one is a lot more unique, and we really enjoyed this one. It's one of our favorites, up there with Manic Mechanics and Tools Up. Those are probably actually our top 3. In this game, you play as valet attendants who are rapidly trying to take people's cars, park them, and return them to them as fast as they possibly can, and there is so much chaos going on here. There's ragdoll physics, there's wonky driving, there's launching the cars across canyons with catapults, there's driving across airplane runways and train stations. It is an absolute blast. This one caused us to laugh so much. This is probably the game that made us laugh second most, second to Tied Together. Definitely worth your time, and this one didn't make us angry at all because it's just pure laughs the entire time. WarioWare Get It Together is a fantastic co-op game without really doing a lot to cooperate. I don't know, this game is filled with all of these little teeny micro games that only last a couple of seconds. I think some of them might be a little longer, like 30 seconds or something, but some of them are like 5 seconds, and it just shows you this thing. You got to figure out what you're supposed to do quickly and then do it. And with the two of you there, you could both figure it out really fast and both start working on it. And we just had a ton of fun, and the wacky wild things that you'll have to do are interesting. You might be shaving somebody's armpit or picking somebody's nose or figuring out how to knock all of the fruit off of the tree. None of these are examples of specific levels. I'm just trying to think of random things that you might have to do in these little micro games. We had an absolute blast with this game. It is not incredibly long, but it has a fun little story, and the micro games are so fun, especially to do in co-op. Castle Crashers is the first beat 'em up Carly and I played together. This is a fantastic game. You play as these knights trying to rescue the kidnapped princesses. You get to level up and increase your stats. You get to use all sorts of different weird and wacky weapons that you can find as you play through the game. Each different knight has their own magic style. So like one of them is like a lightning knight, one of them shoots rainbows. It's pretty wild. The boss fights are crazy. The story is wacky and fun. It is a decently old game, but it is very beloved. Water break. That's the third water I've finished during this recording. Magicka 2 might be up there for contender on games that made us laugh, if only because we had no clue what was going on. We spent probably like an hour or two trying to figure out how to set the language to English in this game, only to find out that it was not in another language. It is literally just gibberish that they are talking, which we did not understand when we downloaded it. This is a game I bought for like $5. I had no clue what it was. It was on sale and I bought it, and it's super fun. But you get all of these different magic abilities that you get to mesh together and control, and everyone's speaking gibberish. They're speaking gibberish, and once you know that, it is so funny to hear and to play through. And we only played for a couple hours of this game, but I have been wanting to get back to it for years now and just never have. But it's one that I've been wanting to talk about, and I'm so glad to finally be talking about it in a video. Pick up Magicka 2, even just for the laughs. It was on sale for like $5 when I picked it up, so I'm sure you can pick it up on sale. Sackboy: A Big Adventure is our favorite 3D platformer. Earlier I said Mario 3D World was not. Sackboy: A Big Adventure is. This is a fantastic 3D platformer in the world of Sackboy. It is filled with some fantastic boppin' groovin' levels. Some of the music in this is so good, and all of the bits and pieces move around to it. There's a lot of different things in it that will actually adapt to the amount of players that you have, like the amount of players it takes to like pull on a cord that'll pop out different coins and collectibles. The platforming in this is fantastic. The different levels are beautiful, and this is one that I love sharing with people when they come over, and I've even actually just lent it out to my brother and then to my brother-in-law so that they could both experience playing this fantastic 3D platformer that is only available on PlayStation. Pile Up Box by Box is another 3D platformer, and this one is a little bit on the decent game side. It's not our favorite, it's not our least favorite game. You play as these boxes and you go through this boxy cardboard world, and you gotta pile up on top of different boxes to solve puzzles. It's a very interesting game with some cute design and fun levels to play through, but there's nothing remarkable that I particularly remember of it. But if you need something new that's a 3D platformer, there you go. Let's Cook Together is an Overcooked-like game that only supports 2 players. Most of these support 4 players. This one is only 2 players, and you play as contestants on a cooking show. But instead of chopping onions and tomatoes and stuff, you are chopping onions and tomato. Oh. I guess you're chopping onions and tomatoes and stuff. It's a cooking show. So you're playing on this cooking show, you're doing the cooking, you're making drinks, and you're throwing stuff across to each other. It is a fun little game that is similar to Overcooked, but also has like some difficulty levels that you can adjust and stuff, which is very nice. We are at 1 hour and 47 minutes that I have been sitting here and talking to you guys now. And I just stopped and started my recordings so that I can make sure they don't corrupt. Pets at Work is a very simple 2D puzzle game where one of you plays as a cat, one of you plays as a dog, and I believe you have different abilities. It's from the same publisher as Kinduo that we talked about earlier. But yeah, you shove boxes around and solve little teeny puzzles in order to make it to the end of the level, and it's fun to play for a little bit, and it's one of those very cheap games that's like $5, so pick it up if you want a simple puzzle game. Chicory is a game I picked up because it was very cute and peaceful looking, and it is fun to play. So this game is all about restoring color to the world. You play as this janitor who is cleaning, and then all of a sudden all of the color's gone, so you go to figure out what's wrong, and the paintbrush to color the world is sitting outside the door of the painter's room, and you take it and then you end up using it, and you get to color the world. And this is fun to do. If you're an artist, you can actually work on coloring the world how you want it to look, which is nice. However, you also get to use this paintbrush to help you solve puzzles. Different elements in the world can actually be interacted with paint. If you paint them, they might grow or do something different or shrink, so that you can actually make it through the world and solve little puzzles as you go along the way. There's not really any fighting in this, but there is some boss fights that you get to participate in, and like some weird like calamity type thing that's happening in the world that you have got to figure out how to stop. There is a lot of customization in this as you get to color every single page in the game. Page is wrong because it is literally a world that you just get to go explore. It's not like you're flipping through a book, but you get to color every level to look how you want it to look. Cat Quest 2 is an action RPG featuring a cat and a dog if you're playing in co-op. This is super fun. It is filled with cat puns all over the place throughout the entire game, including the landscape that you're wandering around is kind of map-esque and has like little labels of the names of the towns and stuff, and you'll have like the cat patrol or something like that. That is just fun, but there is also some fantastic magic spells to get. There's weapons to collect and upgrade, and it has your standard action RPG stuff. It's just fun to play. I think the one issue we had with it is that you do kind of have to fight all of the enemies as you're going along. Otherwise, you're going to end up under-leveled. But other than that, we really enjoyed our time with Cat Quest 2. Mina and Michi is another one of those very cheap, like $5-esque puzzle games that you can enjoy. It's very simple puzzles where you get to like step on buttons to open gates for one another and like push boxes around. There is some very simple combat as well and some little boss fights to participate in. But overall, very simple, very cheap game, but enjoyable nonetheless. The Swords of Ditto Mormo's Curse is another rogue game. I honestly don't know if this one's roguelike or roguelite because we haven't played that much of it. You play as this character who needs to save the world. You get to go through and explore all of these different areas and fight monsters and go into little dungeons and learn little unique things of the story. The story does seem very intriguing, but again, this is one that just Carly got frustrated with because she doesn't like these rogue style of games. Donkey Kong Tropical Freeze is a 2D platformer with Donkey Kong characters. I feel like there's not always a whole lot of big difference between 2D platformers other than the land and the characters that you play as. This one Carly loves. Again, she left me behind because she had the levels memorized, so I haven't played too much of it, but it's worth checking out if you like Donkey Kong or if you just really enjoy 2D platformers and you need something new to pick up. Knack 2 is a co-op game that we bought before we were doing this whole co-op channel thing, which is wild to think about. That's so long ago in my brain, but this is a very interesting 3D platformer, I guess it would be called. You play as this character Knack and a blue Knack character if you're playing in co-op, and you have your basic, moving platforms that you've got to jump to and puzzles that you've got to solve of pulling blocks around. There is plenty of people to fight, and you can like even body slam them and do some interesting fighting mechanics. I know the reviews on this game are not hugely positive. We didn't get super far into it, but I remember enjoying what we played of it. You play as this Knack character who has the ability to grow larger as he gathers more relics and to also leave those relics behind in order to become small and make it through little areas just to summon them back to him and grow larger again. It is a very intriguing game that I think a lot of people just have complaints that it is not super fleshed out, the story's not super deep, but it's a fun little game to play. Little Big Planet 3 is another 2D platformer. This one is a ton of fun. It's in the Little Big Planet universe or the Sackboy universe, and it is all cartoony and cutesy and has an interesting story that I don't really remember, but I remember being interesting. Falling Out is a kind of retro-esque looking roguelike that you get to play through, where you play as this couple who are going on vacation and they end up down in this temple area, and you're trying to work your way through before the water ends up flooding and killing you. It is very difficult, very punishing, not particularly our favorite game, but it might be interesting to you. It kind of meshes a 2D platformer with a roguelike game. Kamikaze Veggies is another game that we were not huge fans of, but it might be something for you. This game has you playing as these vegetables that are trying to infiltrate the enemy camp and kill all of the enemies, and they are a little bit kamikaze and get to blow stuff up. And it's a game that's not a whole lot like anything else we've played, especially in the co-op atmosphere. So if you're looking for something new, something different, and something with that is just wild and wacky, check this one out. Fortnite needs little explanation. It is a 100-player battle royale where you play online, you're fighting against other players, and you can play in teams, and it has split screen co-op, which is fantastic. I had a lot of fun playing this with my cousin in split screen. I also like playing online, but it's kind of fun to be able to play this in split screen and see exactly what they're doing, where they are, when they need help. It does not run super duper well in split screen, but it ran well enough for us to just have a fun time together. We have never been very competitive. I never even really play this game solo. I only ever play it when I'm playing with friends, and it's just a fun little shooting game that you can play co-op. I am almost 2 hours into this recording now. My back is starting to hurt. My throat is getting very sore. I'm not sure if I'm gonna have a voice after this. So if you're enjoying this and you want to continue finding new couch co-op games, please help support the channel and join our membership program. We are offering you a ton of great perks like discounts on the new merchandise, or all the merchandise, not just the new merchandise. You also get some fantastic behind the scenes footage and quick takes on other video games that we've played that I have been putting together for the past 3 years so that when we launch, we would have stuff for you guys. And it is now available. You can join by just simply joining the YouTube memberships, or if you want the cheaper option, go to the coopstop.com/support. Thank you guys so much. Let's get to game number 90. Together is a very interesting 2D platform shooter where the two of you need to stay close together. You cannot get too far away from each other or bad things happen. I think you die, if I recall right, but I could be wrong. I just know that you had to stay close together, so we just never really got far enough apart very often to cause that sort of problem. But you're just making your way through this world, you're platforming on these stages, you're trying to take care of enemies before they get you. It's just an interesting, very cooperative game where you need to make sure you're staying close together and solving the problems together. Billet is an interesting game that I believe sponsored us at one point, and that's how we ended up playing the game, but we had a lot of fun with it. In this game, you are playing in these little areas and you control this little character that goes around and like basically creates the box when you actually make a box, and you're just trying to fill up the area or to like a certain percentage of the area in order to beat the level. But you're also trying to avoid these the enemies that are trying to get you as you're playing, whether it's different obstacles or enemies that are actually trying to come get you. It is very intriguing, very fun, and it was just kind of a blast. For such a simple looking game, we got more than we expected. Coloro is an interesting game that Carly bought on sale because she wanted it. This one has you playing as these little box characters that you have to go through this 2D platformer-esque puzzle level, and you have to figure out what order to do stuff in, what buttons to press in order to make these different switches move. It is very interesting and intriguing and simple, but the puzzles were fun to solve. And occasionally it was a little frustrating as we would die, but it's not too hard to just make your way through the level again. So definitely, I think, again, I believe it's fairly cheap. Lego Marvel. I believe we already covered Lego games. You can get these in basically any of your different fandoms that you enjoy, but if you like Marvel, you can get the Marvel ones and play as Spider-Man and Mr. The stretchy guy. I can't think of his name. Iron Man and all of the different characters. You get to play as the Marvel characters, Captain America, and fight all of the bad guys, and then you just get to enjoy, you can go back through levels and play as characters that you've unlocked. So it is a ton of fun to play these Lego games and smash things and just enjoy your fandom made into Lego. Ooh, Spiritfarer. Now this is one that I wasn't sure we would like, but we ended up loving. Now, I'll have to say, Carly played the majority of this game on her own, but I had a ton of fun when I was playing it with her. So in this game, you play as this girl, and if you're playing co-op, you get to play as her cat, and you are on the ship, and your goal is to help souls make their way back, or not back, but make their way to the next life. So you are just trying to complete quests for them and do whatever it is they need to help them feel satisfied and ready to move on. But along the way, you get to do all sorts of different things. This is kind of like our second Stardew Valley, basically. There's farming to do, you get to organize all the buildings on your ship, you get to manage cooking and all sorts of different little mini games inside these buildings that I didn't get to play because Carly went ahead and played them on her own. But it is so cute. There's caves to end up exploring, there's islands to stop on and collect materials and meet new characters and gather more people to help move on to the next life. It is such a peaceful game. It is really fun to play in co-op, but something about the zooming in and out that it does with the two co-op characters just wasn't enjoyable for Carly, so she just wanted to play it on her own because she was loving the game so much. But if you can stand up with the game being a little bit more zoomed out because of co-op and not having some things to do occasionally when somebody's in a menu, then it's great, a great co-op game. Hiko Park looks incredibly simplistic, and for the most part it is. Your character can walk and jump, and that's it. but you can jump on top of each other to solve the different problems that you need to do. So you often will need to, one of you jump on top of somebody, or one of you jump on top of another, and then that person might have to jump, and then you have to jump while they're in the air in order to cross these different levels. There's a lot of working together in this very simplistic looking game. And it gets a little bit more complex as you move along. You eventually get a vacuum-like thing, and you'll also end up being tied together at certain points in different levels. It's just a very simplistic game, but it takes a lot of communication and effort to make it through. Stealth is another one of these very cheap games that you get to just play through and have fun. So Stealth is a very descriptive name for this game. You play as these little ball characters that are trying to make their way through these levels that can be like mazes or different things, and there's these AI enemies that are browsing around looking for you. There's obstacles you need to avoid that maybe move up and down. We had a ton of fun playing through this one, and it's just so fun, and you get zapped and you just die, and that's the end of the level. It's really fun. I've never particularly thought of myself as a stealth game. In fact, stealth moments in games often just frustrate me. I don't like them very much, but this whole game that is just based on being able to make your way around without getting caught, and both Carly and I enjoyed it a lot. It's $5. Superbox Lands D-Make is another one of these very cheap games. This is a puzzle one, similar to Mina and Michi, except I believe it is only just pushing boxes around. If you think of the boulder puzzles in Pokemon Fire Red, where you had to push the boulders in certain order and stuff, that's what this is. It is entirely just pushing boxes into the right place in the right order onto the buttons so that you can open the doors and move on to the next level. It's simplistic, but it's cheap and it's fun. The Adventure Pals is just a wacky adventure game. So it is a 2D platformer fighting story adventure game. I don't know. It's wild. It's fun. It's got some interesting story. Your grandpa or dad or somebody is kidnapped. And you're just trying to get the money to pay the ransom to get him back. You have this giraffe that can spin and become kind of like a helicopter, and the movement's basically like a Yoshi jump thing. I can't believe I just made that sound, but that's what it is. When you play in co-op, you're basically just a duplicate of the character in a different color, but it's a fun little adventure that you get to go through with a wacky story and a very vibrant and colorful art style. Fogs. I don't know why this is called Fogs, but this is a game about two dogs that are actually one dog. So you are a dog that you're a dog that's connected at the, I don't know. You're two dogs that are connected at the rear end. You don't have any legs. You don't have a butt. You have nothing. You just have two heads, and you're like this little worm, and that is the game. You have to control this dog-like character. You grab stuff with your teeth. You can wiggle along on the ground. You can stretch your body out. You could pass water or air through your body in order to solve puzzles. It's wild and wacky. I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but Carly enjoyed it a lot. And it's also a game that I see on a lot of people's lists as great co-op game. So I thought I would put it on here as a game for you to go check out. It's interesting and has some fun puzzle mechanics. It just can be quite infuriating playing together, both trying to control the same character in a 3D landscape. You know, with Struggling that we talked about near the very beginning of this video, that's a 2D platformer, so it was a lot easier to both control that same character. This one is a 3D landscape, so controlling the character together is a little bit more tough and requires more communication. My Little Universe is a game that Carly loved. Now, I'll be honest, this game is kind of like one of those idle mobile games. It's literally just about gathering more materials so that you can build something, so that you can gather more materials, so that you can build something, so that you can gather more materials, so you can upgrade something. That is the entire gameplay loop, but it is just so chill and cozy and relaxing that it is not difficult at all. There's enemies that are so incredibly easy to fight. It is so simplistic, so easy, that it just was something that really appealed to Carly after a long day of work. For her to just sit down and have a game that she could play that didn't require her to actually work hard at it was really nice. we had a lot of fun just sitting there playing for a couple of hours. I feel bad because it is like one of those idle games, but it was what we needed at the time. So if you need something that is just brain dead that you don't actually need to do anything to, I guess this is this is an option. You're basically trying to build up these worlds and restore them. I think, yeah, you're trying to gather more materials so you could build the world back. That's what it is. 101 games. The last one is Minecraft. I know everybody knows Minecraft. This is one of my favorite games. It is a survival game that is so incredibly fun to play together. There is so much to do. It is all up to your imagination. Yes, there is no story. There is no specific tasks that you need to go do. So if you need that type of a thing in a game, then this is not for you. But I urge you to try Minecraft, to either build something really cool in creative mode or enjoy surviving and diving into the caves and chopping the trees and upgrading your gear and all of that stuff. It is so incredibly fun and close to my heart. This is the game I've been playing for years, so I saved it for last. I hope you enjoyed this. This shirt is now available at thecoopstop.com or at the top link in the description. If you want to pick it up, that would help support the channel so much. I think you might also be able to click a link right here. I love you guys. Y'all are awesome. We'll see you later with some more co-op games. Bye-bye.